The restaurant buzzed with low chatter, silver cutlery clinking on porcelain plates. Elena Vasiliev balanced a tray of steaming pasta and wine glasses as she weaved between tables. It was Friday night at Viento, one of the city's most expensive restaurants, and she had already been on her feet for 6 hours. Her name tag read Elena in neat block letters. The manager always said it made customers feel comfortable. But comfort wasn't something Elena had felt in months. Rent was due next week. Her mother's medical bills had doubled again. Her university classes were slipping away one by one. She took a deep breath before approaching table 21, the one everyone on staff avoided. 4 men sat there, dressed in tailored suits that screamed wealth and danger. The man at the center leaned back with effortless authority, a gold ring glinting on his hand as he stirred his drink. His presence filled the space, even though he spoke softly. Leon Markovich. Everyone knew his name, though no one ever said it too loudly. He ran half the city's import business, at least the half that wasn't legal. He was handsome in a cold, carved way, like a statue that might come to life if it wanted to crush you. Elena felt his gaze before she reached the table. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said, forcing a polite smile. "Would you like to order dessert?" Leon's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Tell me, waitress," he said, his voice smooth as velvet. "What's your name?" "Elena," she replied. "Elena." He repeated it slowly, tasting the sound. "That's Russian, yes?" "My parents were," she answered carefully. Leon's men chuckled. He tilted his head, his eyes glinting with amusement. "I'll give you $10,000, he said, "if you serve me in Russian." The laughter around the table grew louder. Elena froze, her fingers tightening around the tray until her knuckles whitened. $10,000. It was a joke to him, a game. But to her, it was everything: 3 months of rent, her mother's medicine, maybe even tuition for another semester. Her heart pounded. "Don't react. Don't show fear." She set the tray down slowly, straightened, and looked him right in the eyes. She said clearly, "How may I help you, Mr. Markovich?" The laughter stopped. Leon blinked once, his expression unreadable. The restaurant's noise faded into the background, even the servers nearby paused mid-step. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Leon leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. "Perfect pronunciation," he said softly, now in Russian. "Where did you learn?" 4 years at university, Elena replied, still in Russian. "Before I dropped out to work full-time." The faintest smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Impressive. And bold." One of his men shifted uncomfortably. "Boss, she's..." Leon raised a finger. "Quiet." He turned back to Elena. "You have courage, devushka," he said, using the Russian word for girl. "That's rare around me." She swallowed, trying to keep her voice steady. "Do you still want to order dessert, sir?" He laughed then, deep, genuine laughter that sent a shiver through her. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a sleek black card, and slid it across the table. "Come to this address tomorrow at noon," he said, switching back to English. "There's $10,000 waiting for you. And maybe a real job offer." Elena hesitated. Every instinct screamed walk away, but the card gleamed like salvation. She picked it up with shaking hands. "Yes, sir." Leon's smile returned, small but certain. "Good. Don't be late." As she turned to leave, she caught her manager's horrified stare from across the room. He mouthed one word, "No." But she already knew it was too late. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Her small apartment smelled faintly of detergent and instant noodles. On the table lay the black business card. Leon Markovich, M. International Imports. She turned it over in her hand again and again, watching the silver letters catch the dim light. Her mind replayed the scene, his voice, his confidence, the strange power in his eyes. $10,000. Her phone buzzed with a message from the hospital. Outstanding balance due within 5 days. Please contact billing department. Elena pressed the phone to her chest. "I don't have a choice, Mama," she whispered into the darkness. "I'll fix it. Somehow." When dawn came, she was still awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for courage to arrive. The building listed on the card looked nothing like the world Elena belonged to. Horizon Tower rose like a blade of glass into the clouds, its lobby a cathedral of marble and silence. Every step of her worn shoes echoed as she crossed the floor, the security guard's eyes following her. She wore her cleanest blouse, still slightly faded, and the only pair of heels she owned. They pinched her toes, but she stood taller because of them. "Appointment with Mr. Markovich," she said to the receptionist, her voice steadier than she felt. The woman's eyes flicked from Elena's clothes to the name on the screen. 47th floor, she said crisply. "He's expecting you." The elevator's smooth hum filled the silence as it carried her upward. Elena's reflection in the mirrored walls looked out of place, nervous, small, but determined. When the doors opened, the world changed. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline. A massive desk gleamed beneath sunlight. And behind it sat Leon Markovich, reading something on a tablet. He looked up as she entered. "Elena Vassiliev," he said, smiling faintly. "Right on time." She nodded. "You said noon." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Punctuality is rare. I like that." A heavy envelope rested on the desk. He slid it toward her. $10,000, he said simply. "You earned it last night." Elena stared at it. She hadn't expected him to actually pay. I can't take that," she said. "You already did the work," he replied. "You entertained me. You surprised me. And I always keep my word." Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. The weight of the envelope felt unreal. Leon watched her silently, then leaned back in his chair. "You studied languages?" "Yes. Russian and comparative literature." He nodded thoughtfully. "Then you understand communication is power." She hesitated. "Sometimes." "Always," he corrected, his tone calm but firm. "And you speak beautifully. I have a proposal for you, Elena." "A job." Her heartbeat quickened. "A job. I need a cultural translator, someone who can interpret more than just words. My business requires negotiation with Russian partners. Many of my associates lack your finesse." Elena frowned. "You mean criminals?" His eyes sharpened, though his smile never faltered. "Such words depend on perspective." She shook her head. "I don't want to be part of anything illegal." "You misunderstand." He stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "I'm offering you safety. Money. Your mother's treatment, fully covered. Flexible hours around your studies." Her breath caught. "You know about my mother. I make it my business to know who I'm investing in." For a moment, neither spoke. The city stretched beneath them like a glittering map of temptation. Finally, Elena whispered, "Why me?" Leon turned back to her. "Because you looked me in the eye when everyone else looks away." The room fell silent again. He poured 2 glasses of amber liquid and handed her one. "A toast to opportunity." "I don't drink," she said quietly. "Then pretend." She lifted the glass, the smell of whiskey burning her nose. Their glasses clinked softly. Leon watched her over the rim of his glass. "You're not afraid of me," he said. "I am," she admitted. "But I'm more afraid of losing everything." He nodded approvingly. "Honest. That's good." Elena looked down at the city again, the sunlight reflecting off towers like shards of gold. "What exactly would I do?" "Translate. Sit in meetings. Help my associates understand our Russian partners. Nothing dangerous." "Nothing dangerous," she repeated, more to herself than to him. "Unless you lie to me," he said, almost kindly. She looked up, startled. He smiled again. "Relax, Elena. You'll find I'm generous to those who are loyal." Her mind spun the money, her mother, his offer. It was everything she needed and everything she should refuse. Finally, she whispered, "If I say yes, when do I start?" "Tonight," Leon said. "Dinner with Moscow investors. Dress well. You'll be my translator." "Tonight." He nodded once. "I'll have clothes sent to your address." Elena stood, clutching the envelope tightly. "You're serious?" "I never joke about business." She hesitated at the door. "Why help me?" Leon tilted his head slightly, his gaze unreadable. Because sometimes the most useful people are the ones who still have something to lose. The elevator doors closed behind her before she could answer. Back in her apartment, Elena dumped the envelope on her bed. Bills spilled out, crisp, new, almost glowing under the weak lamplight. She counted them twice, then sat in stunned silence. Her mother's voice came faintly from the next room. "Lena." Who was on the phone? "Just work, Mema," she said softly. "I got a better job." "That's wonderful," her mother said, coughing lightly. "See. Things are turning around." Elena forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, turning around." She looked at the clothes bag delivered to her door an hour later, sleek black fabric that smelled faintly of expensive perfume and danger. As she unzipped it, she caught her reflection in the mirror. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. That night, as the city lights flickered outside her window, Elena rehearsed Russian phrases under her breath. She reminded herself it was just one night. Just a job. But deep down, she already knew once you step into Leon Markovich's world, there's no way back to the old one. The money on her bed glimmered like a promise. Or a warning. And tomorrow, she would find out which. Elena stood before her mirror, frozen. The black dress draped across her shoulders like a shadow that didn't belong to her. It fit perfectly, which unsettled her. Someone had guessed her exact size, her exact style, as if they already knew how she'd look standing beside him. The package had come that afternoon, the dress, a pair of heels, and a small velvet box. Inside lay a thin gold bracelet and a note written in looping handwriting. "Every translator needs her tools. Consider these your credentials. LM." She didn't know whether to be flattered or terrified. Her mother was resting, her medications already bought with the money from the envelope. That part felt real, the receipts, the relieved sigh of a woman who no longer had to choose between painkillers and rent. But everything else felt like a dream that was tipping into something darker. The phone rang. A man's voice, polite but firm. "Miss Vasiliev. Mr. Markovich's driver will arrive in 15 minutes. Be ready." Her hands shook as she placed the phone down. There was no going back. When the black sedan arrived, the driver barely looked at her. The city lights blurred past as they drove through the night, towers of gold and glass fading into quieter, wealthier streets. She pressed her hands together to stop them trembling. "You look nervous," the driver said at last. "Should I not be?" He smiled faintly. "Most people are, the first time." The restaurant was a private one, shielded behind tinted glass and armed security. She recognized the name from the city's gossip pages, a place where deals worth millions, and sometimes lives, were sealed over wine and whispered Russian. Leon waited near the entrance, speaking quietly to a man in a silver suit. When he saw her, he stopped mid-sentence. "Elena," he greeted, walking forward. Perfect timing. She forced a smile. "You said dinner at 8. And you listened," he said approvingly, offering his arm. "Good. Come." Inside, the dining room gleamed under soft golden light. 5 men were seated already, their expressions sharp and assessing. They spoke Russian with heavy Moscow accents, fast, confident, predatory. Leon guided her to his side. "Gentlemen," he said in English, "this is Miss Elena Vasiliev, our cultural liaison for the evening. She'll make sure we understand each other clearly." Her heart thudded. She nodded politely and greeted them in Russian. "Good evening, gentlemen." The eldest among them, a man with white hair and eyes like chips of ice, tilted his head. "You speak beautifully," he said in Russian. "Too beautifully for this line of work." Elena smiled thinly. "Words are harmless, sir. It's what people do with them that's dangerous." The men laughed softly, but their amusement didn't reach their eyes. Leon leaned closer, his breath brushing her ear. "You handle them well," he murmured. "Keep it up." The conversation began, polite, full of compliments, and entirely false. Elena translated every phrase, adjusting tone, smoothing over insults, reshaping threats into diplomacy. She quickly understood that these men weren't negotiating over goods or logistics, they were testing each other's power. Every word was a weapon. At one point, The silver-haired man leaned back and said something in Russian that made her blood run cold. Does she understand what happens to translators who choose the wrong side? Elena hesitated before translating. Her eyes flicked to Leon. He raised an eyebrow slightly, a silent command. She chose her words carefully. He says he appreciates your choice of translator, Mr. Markovich. Leon smiled, catching the hidden meaning. Tell him appreciation is mutual. When dessert arrived, she'd stopped feeling her own heartbeat. Her nerves had gone beyond fear into a sharp, icy focus that made everything clear. The meeting ended with handshakes that were more like challenges. As they left, Leon's hand rested briefly on her lower back, a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. In the car, he was silent for a long time. Then he said, "You didn't flinch." "I wanted to," she admitted. "But you were watching." He glanced sideways at her. Good instinct. In this world, hesitation is blood in the water. She turned toward the window. "What world is that exactly?" "The one you're already standing in," he said. The city passed by like a mirage. When he finally dropped her off at her apartment, he handed her a card with a new number on it. "Call this if you need anything," he said. "Anything at all." She looked down at it, then back at him. "What if I want out?" Leon's expression didn't change, but his voice softened. "Then you'll need something stronger than fear to leave." The car door closed behind her, and the sound echoed like a verdict. 2 weeks passed. Elena learned quickly. Every evening she accompanied Leon to meetings, dinners, negotiations, translating not just words but tone, posture, intent. He taught her subtle signals. A raised eyebrow meant she should soften a phrase, a tap of his ring meant change the subject. He never raised his voice, but his presence filled every room. And though he rarely touched her, she always felt his nearness, a gravity she couldn't quite escape. Her mother believed she worked as an interpreter for a private import firm. The lie came too easily now. One night, Leon summoned her to a warehouse at the city's docks. "Routine delivery," he'd said on the phone. "Just translation work." But when she arrived, the air smelled of metal and oil. Men with guns patrolled the shadows. Inside, 2 trucks were parked under harsh lights. A man knelt on the concrete floor, hands bound, blood dripping from his lip. Elena froze at the sight. Leon stood nearby, calm as ever, adjusting his cufflinks. "Ah, good. You're here," he said. "We need your help." She stared at the man on the floor. "What is this?" "A misunderstanding," Leon replied. "This man shorted one of our shipments. I want him to understand the cost of errors in translation." Her stomach turned. "You want me to?" "To explain," Leon said smoothly. "In his language." Dmitri, Leon's second-in-command, handed her a sheet of paper. "Read it," he said. Elena looked at the words, a simple statement of consequence. If the supplier failed again, his family would pay the price. Her hands shook. "I can't say this." Leon's eyes met hers, steady, unreadable. "Yes, you can." The man on the floor looked up at her, pleading silently. He spoke in rapid Russian, begging, promising, swearing he would fix the mistake. Elena hesitated. "He says he didn't mean to. It was an accident." Leon's voice stayed calm. "Tell him that I believe him once. But only once." She translated, voice trembling. Leon stepped closer to the man and crouched down. "You see," he said softly. "That's why we hire translators. Miscommunication can be deadly." He stood again, turned to his men. "Let him go." They hesitated. He nodded once. "Alive." The man was dragged out, coughing and bleeding, but breathing. Elena couldn't move. Leon walked toward her. "You did well," he said. "That wasn't translation," she whispered. "That was intimidation." He tilted his head. "The two are often the same. Words shape outcomes." Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "You said nothing dangerous." "I said nothing directly dangerous," he corrected gently. "You're safe, aren't you?" She wanted to scream at him, but her voice failed. Instead, she turned away, her breath shaking. "Go home," Leon said. "You've done enough for tonight." She left the warehouse without looking back. The cold air outside hit her like a slap. She walked fast, almost running, until she reached the main street. That night, she scrubbed her hands under scalding water until her skin turned red. The smell of blood and oil clung to her memory like smoke. The next morning, there was a knock on her door. Leon stood there, dressed casually for the first time she'd seen, no suit, no mask of power. He carried 2 cups of coffee. "Can I come in?" She wanted to refuse, but she stepped aside anyway. He handed her one of the cups and sat at her small kitchen table. For a long time, he said nothing. Finally, he spoke. "The first time is always the hardest." Elena stared at him. "You think I want to get used to it?" He met her gaze. "No. But you need to understand something. You entered my world the moment you accepted that money. There's no clean way to play in the dirt." She set the coffee down, untouched. "So why tell me that now?" "Because," he said quietly, "I don't want you to lie to yourself. You're here by choice. You could walk away tomorrow." "Could I?" she asked bitterly. He smiled faintly. "You'd still owe me, Elena. And debt is another kind of chain." Silence stretched between them. Outside, the city pulsed with morning light. After a while, he stood. "Come with me," he said. "I'll show you something." Against her better judgment, she followed. He drove her to a small bakery on the city's edge, an old place run by an elderly Russian couple. The smell of bread and coffee wrapped around them as they entered. The old woman greeted Leon in Russian, her face lighting up with recognition. "Leonid. It's been years." He smiled, genuine warmth softening his features. "Too long, Totyana. You still make the best piroshki in the city." Elena watched in surprise as he switched effortlessly into fluent Russian, helping the old man carry trays, joking about recipes. For a moment, he looked normal. After breakfast, they stepped back into the cold. "Not everyone sees this side of you," Elena said quietly. Leon looked at her, eyes thoughtful. "That's because most people don't earn the right to." She met his gaze. "Why show it to me?" He hesitated, then said, "Maybe because you still see me as something more than what I became." The drive back was silent. When he dropped her off, he said only one thing before she got out. "You're stronger than you think, Elena. That's why I chose you." When she entered her apartment, the air felt heavier somehow. She glanced at the mirror, at her own reflection, and wondered who she was becoming. That night, she lay awake listening to the city hum outside. Her phone buzzed once, a message from an unknown number. "Tomorrow. Meeting at 9. Wear confidence." No name. No address. But she knew who it was from. She looked at her hands, still raw from scrubbing, and whispered to herself, "This isn't who I am." But the city didn't care who she was. It only cared what she was worth. And for the first time in her life, Elena Vasiliev was worth more than she could afford to lose. Rain slid down the wide windows of Leon's penthouse office in steady silver threads. The world outside blurred towers softened by mist, the city's pulse slowed by the downpour. Inside, the room was warm, silent except for the faint tick of an antique clock. Elena sat at the polished table, a book of Russian phrases open before her. Leon paced behind her, reading a sheet of notes she'd prepared. "Say it again," he said without looking up. She sighed, repeating slowly. He frowned. "No. Roll it. You sound like a London lawyer, not a Muscovite." Elena closed the book with a snap. "Maybe because I'm not Russian." Leon smiled, amused. "Your accent was flawless that night at the restaurant." "Adrenaline," she said. "Fear makes people perform miracles." He set the papers down, circling the table until he stood beside her. "Then let's see if fear can teach, too." The challenge in his tone made her glance up. He was close enough that she could smell the faint trace of his cologne, cedar, and something darker, expensive. "You don't scare me," she lied. Leon chuckled softly. "You should. I scare everyone else." Their eyes met, his sharp, assessing, hers defiant. A long silence stretched between them before he finally turned away. "Language," he said, "is power. It can calm, deceive, or command. You already understand that, Or you wouldn't still be here. Elena folded her arms. I'm here because I can't afford not to be. Same thing, he murmured. Survival is just another dialect. He picked up her notebook and read the line she'd written. Words build bridges, silence builds walls. He raised an eyebrow. That's poetic. I like words that mean something, she said. He smiled faintly. Then you'll enjoy tonight. Tonight? She asked warily. Dinner. With a partner who doesn't trust me. You'll sit beside me, translate everything, and, most important, tell me what he really means. So, lie if I have to. Interpret, Leon corrected. You'll learn quickly there's not much difference. He handed her a file. Read this. Background on our guest. And don't wear black tonight. Why? He grinned. Because I will. We can't both look like villains. She shook her head, muttering, you already do that well enough for both of us. His laughter followed her all the way to the elevator. Hours later, Elena found herself standing in front of a mirror again, this time in a dark emerald dress Leon's assistant had delivered. It felt too elegant, too costly. She didn't look like herself. She looked like someone who belonged in his world, someone dangerous by association. When she arrived at the private dining room, Leon's expression lingered on her longer than it should have. Better, he said softly. Now you look like you belong here. The dinner went smoothly at first. The Russian guest, a man named Pavel, talked endlessly about shipping routes and tariffs. Leon played the charming host, polite and patient, but his eyes flickered toward her often, silently asking for her read. She began to understand the invisible language beneath their words, how Leon's calm replies masked veiled threats, how Pavel's laughter carried warnings. By the end of the night, she was exhausted from holding her own mask in place. After Pavel left, Leon poured 2 glasses of wine and handed her one. You did well, he said. Elena hesitated, then took it. You're testing me. Always. And if I fail? Leon shrugged. Then you learn. She stared into the glass. And what about you? Do you ever learn? Constantly, he said, leaning back in his chair. For example, tonight I learned that fear and intelligence can share the same eyes. She felt her cheeks warm. Is that supposed to be a compliment? It's supposed to be the truth. He stood, walking toward the window. You translate words. I translate people. You're better at it than most of my men. That's because I actually listen, she said quietly. He turned to her, a faint smile ghosting across his lips. Then listen closely, Elena. This world doesn't reward good people. It rewards useful ones. She met his gaze. Maybe I can be both. Leon's smile faded into something thoughtful. We'll see. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd said her name, soft, careful, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. The sound lingered long after she tried to sleep. For the first time, she realized she wasn't sure which frightened her more, the danger surrounding Leon Markovich, or how much she wanted to understand him. The next week blurred into long days and tense nights. Meetings, translations, careful smiles that meant survival. Elena began to notice patterns, who deferred to Leon, who avoided his gaze, who feared him most. But she also noticed something else. Beneath his calm authority was exhaustion. Sometimes she caught him rubbing his temples when he thought no one was watching. Sometimes his eyes flicked toward the city skyline as if searching for something he'd lost. One evening, Leon asked her to come to the docks again. Just an inspection, he said on the phone. A formality. She almost refused. The memory of that bleeding man haunted her. But curiosity, or maybe the strange gravity that always pulled her toward him, won out. The warehouse was quiet this time. Only a handful of men stood near a shipping container, speaking in hushed tones. Leon greeted her with a nod. Routine check, he said. Nothing to worry about. But his tone didn't convince her. Why am I here? Because the shipment's from Odessa. They only trust Russian speakers. He gestured toward the container. Go ahead. Tell them to open it. Elena did as he asked. The workers obeyed quickly. Inside were crates stacked neatly, labeled as machinery parts. She could see the falsified documents, carefully forged but sloppy enough to signal deception to anyone who knew where to look. Leon's jaw tightened. They think I'm a fool. Before Elena could ask what he meant, Dmitri stepped out from behind a truck, his expression tense. Boss, let me handle this. Leon's voice was calm, but his eyes were steel. No. I want her to hear. Dmitri hesitated. It's not necessary. I said I want her to hear. The workers froze. Leon turned to Elena. Ask them where the rest of it is. Elena translated, and the men exchanged nervous looks before stammering an answer. She listened carefully, then said quietly, they say the rest is on another truck. But they're lying. Leon's smile was thin. I know. He turned to Dmitri. You see. She understands what truth sounds like. Without warning, he struck one of the workers with the back of his hand, not hard enough to break, but enough to silence. The man stumbled, clutching his face. Elena flinched. Leon. He didn't look at her. There's a rule in my world, Elena. If someone cheats you once, it's their fault. If they do it twice, it's yours. He stepped closer to the trembling worker. Where is it? The man blurted out the truth. Half the shipment had been sold off, the rest hidden in another warehouse. Leon nodded slowly, then turned away. Get rid of them, he told his men. Quietly. The order was soft, but final. Elena's stomach churned. Get rid of Leon, please. He cut her off, voice still even. They made their choice. We make ours. She couldn't watch. She turned away, her pulse racing. The sounds behind her were muffled, efficient. When it was over, Leon said quietly, it's done. She faced him, fury and disbelief mixing in her chest. You can't just. I can, he said. And I did. He stepped closer. This is what you signed up for when you took my money. I didn't sign up for this. Leon's eyes flicked toward her trembling hands. You're shaking, he said softly. But you're still standing. That's how it begins. Her voice cracked. How what begins? Transformation. For a moment, he looked almost regretful. I used to shake too, you know. The first time I watched someone die because of my order. Elena stared at him. You're not proud of it. He shook his head. No. But pride doesn't feed people. It doesn't protect them. Then what does? Control, he said simply. And I control what I must. The air between them felt heavy. She wanted to hate him, but something in his voice, a weary honesty, held her still. You could walk away, he said quietly. I won't stop you. Elena swallowed hard. You'd find me again. He smiled faintly. Yes. That night, she dreamed of the warehouse, the echo of footsteps, the cold shine of Leon's eyes, the terrible calm in his voice. When she woke, her hands were shaking. The next morning, he appeared at her door again, as if summoned by her thoughts. He carried coffee and a small bag of pastries. Eat, he said. You look pale. She glared at him. You think food fixes everything? No, he said. But it's a start. They sat in silence for a while. The coffee steamed between them. Finally, she asked, why me, Leon? You have 100 people who'd die for you. Why bring me into this? He considered her for a long time. Because you see me too clearly. She frowned. And that's a good thing. It's dangerous, he admitted. But interesting. He stood, setting the empty cup on her table. Be ready tonight. There's another meeting. And this time, you'll be more than a translator. Meaning? He smiled. Meaning they'll believe what I say because it comes through your voice. As he left, Elena pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. The line between survival and complicity was blurring fast, and she couldn't tell when she'd already crossed it. That evening, she looked out her window as the sun set behind the skyline. The city glowed gold for a brief moment before sinking into shadow. She thought of her mother sleeping peacefully, the hospital bills now paid in full. She thought of Leon's calm voice saying, "This is what you signed up for." And she realized the truth: some debts couldn't be repaid with money. They could only be lived. Morning sunlight spilled across Elena's desk, turning the half-drunk cup of tea beside her into liquid gold. Her apartment looked deceptively peaceful, books stacked neatly, curtains drawn halfway, the air filled with the smell of paper and soap. But beneath that calm, the world she lived in was splitting into two. In one life, she was still a student, technically. Her classmates thought she'd taken a translation internship with a foreign company. When she managed to attend class, she smiled, took notes, and pretended she wasn't living among criminals. The professors praised her precision with words, unaware that her lessons now came from survival, not textbooks. In the other life, the secret one, she was always in motion. Meetings, coded phone calls, long dinners under dim lights. She translated threats wrapped in polite sentences, bargains written in silence and eye contact. And Leon was always there, calm, controlled, watching her like a teacher who already knew how the exam would end. Some nights, when he dropped her home, she caught herself waiting for his car headlights to linger on her building. Sometimes they did. That evening, she visited her mother at the hospital. The older woman looked stronger now, her cheeks no longer pale, her laughter lighter. "Lena, you look tired," her mother said, taking her hand. "Are you working too much again?" Elena smiled faintly. "It's just different work now. But it's good. We're okay." Her mother squeezed her hand gently. "Whatever it is you're doing, I hope it's honest." The words hit like a quiet blow. Elena hesitated before answering. "It's complicated. Life always is," her mother said softly. "Just don't lose yourself in the middle of it." As she walked back to the car, the city lights flickering across the pavement, she couldn't help hearing those words echo in her head, "Don't lose yourself." Later that week, Leon took her to a gala at the Museum of Modern Art. "My associates find you intriguing," he'd said when she asked why her presence was required. "They think you're my secret weapon." She had laughed, but deep down she knew it wasn't a joke. The event was dazzling, crystal chandeliers, champagne glasses clinking like wind chimes. Politicians, artists, and businessmen mingled under enormous paintings that no one truly looked at. Elena moved through the crowd beside Leon, her hand brushing his arm now and then, her translator's smile fixed perfectly in place. "You seem comfortable," he murmured. "You were terrified your first night." "I learned," she replied. "People here speak the same language as the men in warehouses, they just wear cleaner clothes." Leon chuckled quietly. "You're starting to see the world properly. And that's a good thing. It's the only way to survive." A woman's voice interrupted them. "Leon, you didn't say you were bringing someone new." Elena turned to see an elegant woman approaching, tall, with dark hair swept into a perfect knot and a diamond that caught every shard of light. Her presence was commanding. Her smile, however, was sharp as glass. "This is Aria, wife of one of my oldest associates," Leon said. "And this is Elena, my translator." Aria's gaze lingered on Elena, assessing. "Translator," she repeated softly. "Interesting word for such company." Elena met her eyes evenly. "Words can be dangerous if you don't handle them carefully." Aria smiled, clearly impressed. "I like her," she said to Leon. "She's braver than she looks." When Aria drifted away, Leon exhaled quietly. "Don't let her fool you. She's the most dangerous person in this room." Elena glanced at him. "Including you?" He smiled. "Especially including me." As the evening went on, she noticed things about Leon she hadn't before. He spoke easily with artists about Russian literature, quoting lines from Pushkin and Chekhov. His eyes softened when he talked about art, about meaning. For a brief moment, he seemed like a man who could have been someone else entirely, a professor, perhaps, or a writer. Later, as they stepped onto the museum balcony overlooking the glowing city, Leon said quietly, "Do you know I used to paint?" Elena blinked. "You?" He nodded. "Before my father died, before I learned what kind of world really pays its bills. My mother used to say I had an artist's hands." "What happened?" He smiled without humor. "Reality." She studied him for a long moment. "You could still paint." "I could," he agreed. "But I wouldn't like what came out anymore." Something in his tone, regret mixed with resignation, lodged deep inside her. She turned back to the city lights, unsure what to say. Leon glanced at her. "You judge me sometimes." "I see it." Only when you deserve it. He laughed softly. Fair enough. They stood there in silence until the sound of distant sirens rose from below. The city stretched endlessly ahead, cold and alive. In that moment, Elena realized she wasn't sure if she was standing beside her captor or her reflection. Rain again. Always rain when the city seemed to shift into another version of itself. It was past midnight when Leon called. His voice was calm but weary. Come to the office. I can't sleep. Elena almost said no. But something in his tone, something human, stopped her. When she arrived, he was alone, seated at his desk with an open bottle of whiskey. The skyline glittered behind him like a painting of gold and steel. I didn't mean to wake you, he said. But it's quiet tonight. Too quiet. She sat across from him. You don't like quiet? It reminds me I'm alone, he said simply. They sat in silence for a moment. The sound of rain against the glass filled the room. You know, he began slowly, my father used to say there are only two kinds of men in the world. Those who build, and those who take. He built a small shipping company. Honest work. When he died, I took everything and built it into something he wouldn't recognize. Elena watched him carefully. Do you regret it? He poured another glass of whiskey and handed it to her. I regret believing the world rewards honesty. She took a sip, wincing at the burn. Maybe it does. Just not in your world. He smiled faintly. My world is everyone's world, Elena. Some just dress it better. He stood and walked to the window, rain streaking the glass beside him. You want to know the real irony? My mother was Russian. My father forbade her from speaking her language at home. Said it made us sound poor. But I used to hear her sing lullabies when she thought I was asleep. Beautiful songs. I didn't understand the words then, but I remember the feeling. Elena's voice softened. She must have loved you very much. She did, Leon said quietly. Until life made her stop. Grief kills love faster than hate ever could. He turned back to her, his eyes unreadable. Now you understand why I keep you around. Because I speak Russian, she asked, half smiling. Because you sound like her when you do. The words hung in the air like a confession he hadn't meant to make. Elena looked away, her throat tight. That's not fair, she whispered. No, he agreed. But nothing in my world ever is. They spent the next hour talking not about business, but about books, childhood memories, and the absurdities of fate. Leon quoted Dostoevsky, and Elena corrected his pronunciation, which made him laugh for the first time in weeks. When she finally stood to leave, he said quietly, you make this place less empty. She hesitated at the door. And you make it harder to remember who I was before. He didn't answer, but his eyes followed her until the elevator doors closed. The following day, something shifted. The men in Leon's circle treated her differently now, not as decoration, not even as a translator, but as someone important. She saw the change in Dimitri's stare, cold and suspicious. He didn't like how Leon listened when she spoke, or how his temper softened around her. During one meeting, Dimitri leaned close and muttered, careful, girl. You're too close to the sun. You'll burn. Elena didn't look at him. Maybe I already have. That evening, she visited Leon's penthouse for their usual language practice. He sat at the table surrounded by open notebooks, the rain tapping softly outside. Teach me something new, he said. She smiled despite herself. All right. Repeat after me. He tried, stumbling over the last word. She laughed. No, like this, listen to the rhythm. He tried again, slower this time. What does it mean? Fate loves the brave, she translated. Leon's eyes lingered on hers. Then maybe that's why you're still here. Her heart skipped. She turned back to the notebook. You should practice your verbs. He reached out, his hand covering hers briefly. Elena. She froze. The warmth of his palm against her skin felt like electricity, soft, dangerous, real. For a moment, neither moved. Then Leon withdrew his hand. You should go. It's late. She gathered her things silently, her pulse thundering. At the door, she turned back. You know, for someone who talks about control all the time, you're not very good at it. He smiled faintly. Neither are you. That night, lying in bed, Elena stared at the ceiling, her heart still racing. She didn't know what scared her more, that he was starting to feel something for her, or that she already had. The next morning, the illusion of safety shattered. When she arrived at the office, Dmitri was waiting outside Leon's door, his expression tight. "He's not seeing anyone today," he said. Elena frowned. "He told me to. I said he's busy." She tried to step past him, but his hand caught her arm, not hard, but firm. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You don't belong in his world, girl. And when he falls, he'll drag you down with him." She pulled her arm free. "Then I'll learn how to land." Before he could reply, Leon's voice called from inside, "Let her in." Dmitri stepped aside, his glare following her all the way through the door. Leon was at his desk, a half-finished sketch beside his paperwork, a pencil drawing of Moscow's skyline. When he saw her eyes fall on it, he looked embarrassed for the first time since she'd known him. "It's nothing," he said. "A bad habit." "It's beautiful," she replied softly. He shook his head. "It's dangerous to make beautiful things. They remind you of what you've lost." She hesitated. "Then maybe you should lose less." For a moment, he looked at her as though she'd said something that mattered more than she knew. "Maybe I should," he said quietly. Outside, thunder rolled through the city, and the rain began again, heavy, relentless, washing the glass walls in streaks of silver. Elena knew then that something irreversible had begun. Whatever this was, danger, fascination, or something far more human, it was no longer just business. And the worst part was, she didn't want it to be. By the time autumn arrived, Elena no longer recognized her own reflection. She still wore her university's emblem pinned to her coat, but it felt like a disguise. She sat in classes when she could, scribbling notes half-heartedly while her mind drifted to names and codes she wasn't supposed to remember. Her phone never left her hand. Every vibration could be Leon. Every silence could mean trouble. Her classmates whispered about her new clothes, her new car, her sudden money. One of them, Marina, asked over coffee, "So what do you actually do now? You vanish for days. You used to talk about books, not business meetings." Elena smiled thinly. "I translate." "Translate what?" "Everything that pays," she said. Marina laughed, thinking it was a joke. Elena didn't correct her. She didn't tell anyone about the nights filled with coded documents or the men who carried guns under their coats. She didn't mention how Leon's empire seemed to be tightening around her life like invisible wires. That week, Leon summoned her to a meeting at the estate of a powerful investor named Krylov, a man whose name appeared in every rumor that involved money and danger. The meeting room was filled with quiet tension, men speaking half in Russian, half in English. Leon sat at the head of the table, calm as a statue. Elena stood slightly behind him, notebook open, pen ready. Her job was simple: translate, observe, and never react. Halfway through, Krylov leaned back and studied her. "Your interpreter is quite young," he said in Russian. "Pretty face for this business. Are you sure you can trust her?" Elena felt her pulse quicken but didn't translate immediately. Leon looked at her. "What did he say?" She took a breath. "He said he appreciates how young your team is," she replied smoothly. Krylov chuckled, recognizing her choice to protect Leon's dignity. "Smart girl," he said. After the meeting, Leon dismissed his men and turned to her. "You didn't tell me exactly what he said, did you?" "No." "Why?" "Because it wasn't worth repeating." He smiled faintly. "And yet you protected me anyway." "I protected the deal," she corrected. Leon's eyes softened. "You're learning to lie like a professional." Elena wanted to tell him that it wasn't a compliment. That every lie left a small cut somewhere she couldn't see. But instead she said, "You taught me well." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're dangerous now," he murmured. "That's good." Later that evening, while Leon spoke with Dmitri in the next room, Elena waited near the office window. She could hear fragments of their conversation through the half-closed door. Dmitri's tone was tight, angry. "She's a liability, Leon. You're blinded by her." "She's useful," Leon replied. "And she's loyal." "Loyal? To what?" "You." Or the money. When the time comes, she'll choose survival. Leon's voice dropped. So will you. That's how I know we're alike. A long silence followed. Then Dmitri said something Elena couldn't catch, and the conversation ended abruptly. When Leon returned, he found her still staring out at the night city. Eavesdropping, he asked lightly. Listening, she said. There's a difference. What did you hear? That you don't trust each other. He smiled wryly. In my world, trust is a luxury. One I stopped affording long ago. She turned toward him. Then why trust me? I don't, he said simply. But I'd like to. The next morning, a black SUV trailed her car all the way to campus. It stayed just far enough behind to pretend coincidence. When she told Leon about it, he said only, ignore it. You're safe. But she didn't feel safe. Every noise in her apartment, every shadow on the street, made her flinch. Her double life was starting to crack. During one late-night meeting, she made a mistake, a simple mistranslation that shifted the meaning of a deal by a single word. It was enough to anger Leon's foreign partners, who shouted accusations before storming out. When they were gone, Leon's voice was dangerously calm. You cost me $3 million tonight. Her throat tightened. It was an honest mistake. There's no such thing as an honest mistake in my world, he said, stepping closer. Only expensive ones. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The silence between them was heavy enough to crush. Finally, he exhaled and turned away. You'll fix it tomorrow. Call them, apologize, whatever it takes. She nodded, shaken. As she left the office, Dmitri was waiting near the elevator. He leaned against the wall, smirking. You see, you're not untouchable. None of us are. Elena didn't answer. But the next day, she did fix it flawlessly. The Russian partners apologized, the deal closed, and Leon said only one thing. Next time you fall, make sure you land on your feet. At night, Elena wrote in her journal, the only place she could still be honest. He's not the man I thought he was. But he's also not the monster they say he is. Sometimes I think he's both, and maybe that's what scares me most. When she closed the notebook, her phone buzzed with a message from Leon. You did well today. Sleep. She stared at the screen, unsure whether it was an order or a kindness. A week later, the trap began quietly, almost elegantly. A courier delivered a sealed envelope to Elena's apartment, no return address, no explanation. Inside were documents labeled urgent, translation required. They were full of coded entries and shipment details that looked different from anything she'd handled before. She texted Leon. Did you send these? The reply came 5 minutes later. What documents? Her stomach dropped. Someone had sent them directly to her, bypassing his office. The courier had insisted they came from the top. She stared at the papers, realizing what they contained: names, transaction records, account numbers. If anyone connected these to her, she'd be implicated in every crime Leon had ever touched. Elena's instincts screamed danger. She left the apartment and drove straight to Leon's office. He wasn't there, but Dmitri was. He looked startled to see her. You shouldn't be here, he said. I need to speak to Leon. He's in a meeting. Then I'll wait. Dmitri hesitated, then shrugged. Fine. But don't touch anything. While he stepped out to take a call, Elena noticed a folder lying half open on his desk. Curiosity overrode caution. She saw her own name written across the top of a printed report. The first line made her blood run cold. Subject: Elena Vasiliev, potential witness cooperation. She flipped through the pages, surveillance photos of her at the university, at the hospital, even outside her apartment. The file listed her mother's full medical history, her tuition records, her bank transactions. When Dmitri returned, she slammed the folder shut. What is this? He froze. You shouldn't. What is it, Dmitri? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Insurance. Her voice trembled. Insurance against what? Against people who get too close to Leon and forget their place. Before she could speak, Leon's voice echoed from the hallway. What's going on? Elena turned, the folder still in her hands. Ask him. Leon's eyes flicked to Dimitri. Explain. Routine background check, Dimitri said smoothly. You told me to watch everyone. I'm watching. Leon's tone was ice. You overstepped. I protected you, Dimitri shot back. She's a risk, Leon. You can't see it, but I can. Elena felt the air crackle between them. Leon finally said, leave us. Dimitri hesitated, then walked out, muttering something under his breath in Russian. When he was gone, Leon turned to her. You shouldn't have seen that. You shouldn't have let him make it. I didn't. Then why keep him? Leon sighed, rubbing his temples. Because loyalty is rare. Even when it rots. Elena dropped the envelope of documents onto his desk. These came for me today. Whoever sent them wants me gone, or worse. Leon opened them, scanning quickly. His expression darkened. This isn't mine. These came from someone inside trying to frame you. Her voice shook. Frame me for what? For everything. For the next hour, Leon worked fast, calling, checking files, tracing codes. Finally, he looked up, eyes hard. It's Dimitri. He's been selling information to the feds for months. Elena felt dizzy. Then his. Setting you up to take the fall, Leon finished. He leaks these, you become the perfect scapegoat. Innocent face, foreign background, easy to believe. Her stomach turned. What do we do? He handed her a phone. You act normal. Pretend you're working on those translations. I'll handle the rest. Elena, he added quietly, this will get ugly. Stay close to me. She nodded, though fear clawed at her chest. As she left his office, she caught sight of Dimitri watching from across the hall. He smiled, slow, knowing, like a wolf waiting for the first drop of blood. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. The city outside felt alive with eyes. Every shadow seemed to breathe. She packed the documents into a folder, took photos of each page, and hid a copy on a flash drive. She didn't know why, maybe instinct, maybe desperation, but something told her she'd need proof later. Around 2 a.m., her phone buzzed with a single message from an unknown number. You've made a mistake, Elena. He can't save you this time. Her pulse thundered. She typed back quickly. Who is this? No reply. Only silence. And the faint hum of a car engine outside her window that didn't drive away until dawn. By sunrise, Elena was running on fear instead of sleep. The city glimmered through her window, indifferent to the chaos unraveling in her life. Her stomach twisted with dread as she replayed the messages, the documents, Dimitri's smirk. Every instinct screamed that something was about to collapse, and she was standing directly beneath it. When she reached Leon's penthouse, the guards didn't stop her. That, more than anything, terrified her. They always stopped everyone. Inside, Leon stood by the window, his phone pressed to his ear. His suit jacket hung over the back of a chair, his sleeves rolled up, and his jaw clenched tight enough to crack. When he hung up, he didn't look at her right away. They confirmed it, he said finally. Dimitri's been feeding information to the federal task force. Payments through offshore accounts, encrypted messages to contacts in D.C. Elena swallowed hard. And me. He used your name on every transmission, Leon said. He sent copies of the documents you received. He wants them to believe you're the leak. Her breath hitched. His framing me completely. Leon nodded. If those files reach the wrong hands, you'll go down for crimes you never touched. Money laundering, smuggling, espionage, things that would bury you for decades. Her chest tightened. Why would he do that? He's your second. He's loyal to you. Leon's eyes darkened. Loyalty to me, yes. But not loyalty to losing his power. I made you indispensable. That made him vulnerable. He's not protecting me anymore, he's protecting himself. He walked to the desk and spread a series of papers before her. They were shipment logs, bank transfers, communication records. Every single one bore Dimitri's signature. You could take this to the authorities, Leon said, voice low. Use it to save yourself. Elena blinked at him. And you? I'm already guilty, he said simply. I've been guilty for 20 years. For a moment, she couldn't find words. He looked almost tired, less like the untouchable crime lord and more like a man finally understanding the cost of his own empire. You could run, she said softly. Leon shook his head. Running's for men who still have something to chase. Silence hung between them until she finally asked, "What do you want me to do?" He met her eyes. "Stay close. Pretend you're still working for Dimitri's side of the operation. Let him think he's winning. He'll slip. And when he does, I'll be ready." Elena's stomach knotted. "And if he doesn't?" Leon's mouth curved into something cold. "Then I'll make him." The next 3 days were a blur of lies. Elena continued translating documents, attending meetings, smiling when Dimitri passed her in the hall. He seemed calmer now, confident. Once, he even stopped by her office, leaning in the doorway like an old friend. "Rough week," he said. "You holding up?" "Trying," she said, forcing a smile. "Good." He smirked. "You're stronger than you look." She watched him leave, her fingers shaking under the desk. The flash drive with her backup files burned like a secret in her pocket. Later, Leon called her into his private office. "It's time," he said. "His meeting with a rival crew tonight. I want you there." "Why me?" "Because he doesn't think I know," Leon said. "But he still trusts you. You'll translate the conversation." "Every word." Elena hesitated. "Leon, if this goes wrong." He cut her off. "If it goes wrong, I'll handle it." That night, the meeting took place at an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. The air was sharp with rust and rain. Leon's car stopped a block away. "You'll go in first," he told her. "I'll follow. Stay calm. Don't react, no matter what happens." Elena nodded, though her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She stepped into the factory's vast darkness, her footsteps echoing. Dimitri was already there, speaking in Russian to 2 unfamiliar men. He looked up when she entered. "Ah, our translator," he said smoothly. "Good. You're just in time." Elena forced a polite smile. "You wanted me to translate, yes?" He gestured to the men. "They need reassurance. They're nervous about Leon's stability. Too many cracks in the empire. They prefer new management." Her stomach twisted. New management meant Dimitri. He handed her a folder. "Read this out loud," he said. "Tell them it's the official plan moving forward." She opened it and froze. The papers contained a signed confession, supposedly written by Leon, admitting to years of illegal operations. Her signature was forged at the bottom as the translator and witness. "I can't read this," she said, her voice trembling. Dimitri's smile vanished. "You will. And if I don't?" He pulled a gun from his coat and pressed it to her ribs. "Then I'll read it myself." The sound of metal against bone made her skin crawl. Her voice shook as she began to read in Russian, translating each sentence. But before she reached the end, a door slammed open behind them. Leon's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. "I think the translation's over." The entire room froze. Leon stepped out of the shadows with 2 armed men. His expression was eerily calm. "Dimitri," he said softly. "After 15 years, I expected a better betrayal." Dimitri's gun shifted from Elena to Leon. "I learned from the best." Leon took a step forward. "You set her up. You used my name. You sold my people. I survived," Dimitri said. "That's more than most who trust you can say." The next few seconds happened all at once. Elena ducked, Leon's men drew their weapons, and gunfire erupted in deafening bursts. The factory filled with chaos, sparks, and shouting. Elena crawled behind a crate, clutching her ears as bullets ricocheted off metal. She saw Leon dive behind a pillar, firing methodically, his face illuminated in flashes of orange light. When the noise finally died, smoke hung thick in the air. Dimitri was gone, and one of Leon's men lay bleeding near the door. Leon walked toward her, blood spattering his sleeve. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, voice trembling. "No. But Dimitri. He won't get far," Leon said. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "You did well, Elena. You bought me time." He helped her stand. It's over, he said. For now. But she could see in his eyes that he didn't believe it. When Elena woke again, sunlight shimmered through lace curtains. The air smelled of pine and rain. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she heard Leon's voice from another room. She's awake. She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her shoulder. Her arm was wrapped in gauze, a faint red stain seeping through. Leon appeared in the doorway, dressed in a plain sweater instead of a suit. Easy, he said. You were hit by a ricochet. It wasn't serious, but you lost blood. Her throat felt dry. Where are we? Outside the city. My property near the lake. He walked to the window, glancing at the calm water beyond. No one knows we're here. She stared at him. Why bring me? Because Dimitri will go after you first, he said. You're the one who ruined his plan. Elena tried to protest, but exhaustion pulled her down again. When she woke next, the room was dim, and Leon sat beside her bed reading. You don't have to watch me, she murmured. He didn't look up. You think I'm doing it for you? That almost made her smile. Then for what? He closed the book and met her gaze. Because I need to remember what I'm fighting for. Days passed slowly. Her strength returned, and so did her questions. Leon stayed nearby but rarely spoke about what had happened. When she pressed him, he finally said, Dimitri disappeared. I have people searching. Until we find him, we wait. The waiting gnawed at her. The quiet felt unnatural. Some nights she wandered to the porch overlooking the lake, the moonlight turning the water silver. Leon often joined her, two silent silhouettes sharing the same insomnia. You ever think about stopping? She asked one night. He chuckled softly. Stopping what? All of it. The business. The fighting. The lies. His smile faded. If I stop, everything I built collapses. Every person depending on me, gone. Power's the only thing keeping them alive. Even you. Leon looked at her. Especially me. They stood in silence until she said, you could leave. Disappear somewhere quiet. And do what? Open a bakery? She smiled faintly. You'd burn the first loaf. He laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Probably. For a brief, fragile moment, they weren't boss and translator, sinner and witness. Just two people who had lost too much and didn't know how to stop wanting more. On the fourth morning, he brought breakfast to her room. Fresh bread, coffee, fruit. The simple gesture felt almost domestic. The doctor says you're healing fast, he said. She looked up at him. You called a doctor here? He nodded. One who doesn't ask questions. She hesitated. Leon, if the police come. They won't, he said firmly. I've made sure of it. But Dimitri won't find us. He said it with conviction, but there was something new in his eyes, fear he wouldn't admit. Later that afternoon, he stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, tense. They raided the warehouse, he said. Yes. I know. Just handle it. When he hung up, his hands were trembling. They seized everything. My accounts, my shipments. Everything I've built. Elena's chest tightened. The authorities. He nodded. Someone tipped them off. They knew exactly where to hit. Dimitri? Or someone working with him. He turned toward her, eyes burning. They're closing in. Every door is shutting at once. She stepped closer. Then maybe it's time to stop running. He laughed bitterly. You still don't understand. Without that empire, I have nothing. No protection. No control. Not even enough to keep you safe. She met his gaze. Maybe safety doesn't come from control. He stared at her for a long time before saying softly, you sound like my mother. That night, she found him outside by the lake, staring into the darkness. The reflection of the moon trembled on the water like a coin tossed between worlds. You should go, he said quietly. You could still walk away. Elena shook her head. And what happens to you if I do? He smiled faintly. I'd probably deserve whatever comes next. She stepped beside him. Then we face it together. He looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment, All the walls he built seemed to fall. "You don't even know what that means," he whispered. "Maybe I do." He reached out, brushing her hand with his. Neither pulled away. For the first time in years, Leon Markovich didn't feel untouchable. And for the first time in her life, Elena Vasiliev didn't feel powerless. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled over the lake, carrying the promise of another storm. And neither of them moved. The lake house was too quiet. Even the wind had learned not to disturb Leon when he was thinking. For days he barely spoke, pacing from window to window as his empire collapsed one news alert at a time. Elena could feel the tension vibrating through the walls like static. She tried to distract herself with books, cooking, anything that felt normal. But every few hours Leon's phone would buzz with another report: more warehouses seized, more accounts frozen, more men arrested. It was the slow death of a kingdom, and the man who ruled it was watching from exile. Late one evening, as the sky burned violet over the lake, headlights flared down the gravel road. Leon's hand was instantly on his gun. Elena rose from her chair, heart pounding. "Stay here," he said, moving to the door. Through the glass, they saw a black car stop in front of the house. A woman stepped out, heels clicking on the wet stone. She didn't run or shout or hide. She just walked calmly to the door, her face half hidden by the hood of her coat. Leon opened the door without asking who she was. "Aria," he said flatly. "Leon," she greeted, lowering the hood. Rain streaked her hair, her lipstick perfectly unbothered. "You look terrible." He didn't smile. "What are you doing here?" Aria's gaze flicked toward Elena, then back to him. "I came to save you both." Elena stiffened. "Save us?" Aria stepped inside, uninvited, shaking rain from her coat. "Gregory's been arrested," she said. "They're moving in on everyone. The prosecutor has your name, Leon, your partners, your suppliers, half the city's rot laid out in files." Leon crossed his arms. "And you just decided to drive 3 hours through a storm to warn me out of kindness?" Aria's lips curved faintly. "I never do anything out of kindness. But I do recognize opportunity." She pulled a sealed envelope from her bag and placed it on the table. "Inside is a list of people the government really wants. Politicians. Bankers. Men whose names buy silence. Give them this, and they'll trade you immunity." Elena blinked. "You're saying we sell them bigger criminals?" Aria shrugged. "Call it moral recycling." Leon laughed once, sharp and humorless. "And what's in it for you?" "Freedom," Aria said simply. "I've been undercover for 12 years. My husband, Gregory, he was my assignment before he became my cage. I want out. You want survival. We can help each other." Elena stared. "You're a spy." Aria smiled. "Such an ugly word. I prefer observer." Leon turned away from both of them, staring out at the rain. "You think you can bargain with the federal government like you're trading stocks? They'll take your files and put us in the same cell anyway." "Not if they think you're useful," Aria said. "They want corruption, Leon, not bodies. Give them the right story, and they'll let you rewrite your ending." Elena stepped closer. "It could work," she said. "You said yourself they're closing in. This could stop it before it gets worse." Leon turned, eyes flashing. "You think I'm scared of prison? I think you're tired of burying the people you care about," she said quietly. That silenced him. Aria watched their exchange with interest. "I like her," she murmured. "She says what I can't." They spent the night arguing plans, risks, possibilities. Leon's temper flared, then cooled, then flared again. Finally, near dawn, he poured a glass of vodka and sat heavily in the armchair. "Let's say I agree," he said. "How do we make them listen?" Aria slid a small device onto the table, a phone encrypted beyond recognition. "You call this number. Use the phrase Black Orchard. It connects directly to a handler in the bureau. He'll know who I am." Leon eyed the device like a venomous snake. "And if you're lying? Then you'll be arrested by nightfall anyway," she said simply. "Either way, your fate changes today." Elena touched the envelope Aria had brought. "What's in here exactly?" "Names," Aria said. "Enough to make the world shake if they go public." I collected them for years. The bureau wanted leverage. I built it for them. Leon poured another drink but didn't touch it. You expect me to become a traitor. I expect you to become smart, Arya said. There's a difference. The next morning, Elena woke to find Leon already on the phone. His voice was calm but tight, repeating the phrase Black Orchard once, then waiting. After a long pause, a man's voice answered. You have information? Leon's eyes met Elena's. Enough to trade a lifetime. Then we're listening, the voice said. The line went silent. For the next 3 days, the lake house turned into a war room. Arya's calm efficiency clashed with Leon's stubborn pride. Elena acted as the bridge between them, translating coded notes, making calls, double-checking details. At night, Leon and Elena would stand on the porch, the moon mirrored on the water, and speak in quiet fragments. You believe her? She asked. I believe she has more to lose than we do, he said. That makes her honest, for now. What about you? Do you want this deal? He exhaled smoke into the cold air. I want a chance to start over. But I don't know if men like me get that kind of grace. Maybe it's not about grace, she said. Maybe it's about not wasting what's left. He looked at her, and for a second the distance between them vanished, not physically, but in a way that felt deeper. You should have met me before all this, he said quietly. Would I have liked you then? He smiled faintly. Probably not. I was worse. On the 4th day, the plan fell apart. A storm rolled in, and with it came flashing lights in the distance, cars moving fast down the empty road toward the house. Leon grabbed his gun. How did they find us? Arya's face drained of color. They shouldn't have. The contact, he must have leaked it. Elena's pulse hammered. The bureau? Or Dmitri, Leon said. Either way, we've been sold again. Arya grabbed a flash drive from the table and shoved it into Elena's hand. Backup of the files. If they take us, hide this. They'll need it later. Wait. But there was no time. The first explosion of glass shattered the front window as armored men shouted commands. Federal agents. Drop your weapons. Leon cursed under his breath, pulling Elena behind him. There's a tunnel under the cellar. Go. Arya fired twice through the window, buying them seconds. Move. Elena stumbled after Leon down a narrow flight of stairs into darkness. Behind them, the sound of boots and braking wood thundered through the house. They reached a narrow tunnel that opened into the trees behind the property. Rain poured in sheets, soaking them instantly. Leon gripped her wrist. They're not after you, he said. If you walk away now, you can still disappear. Tell them I held you hostage. Tell them anything. Elena shook her head fiercely. No. I'm not running again. He stared at her for a long second, rain dripping from his lashes. Then he nodded. Together, then. They vanished into the forest as helicopters roared overhead. They ran for miles through the rain, down slopes of wet leaves and sharp stones, until the sounds of engines faded. The forest swallowed them in silence. By dawn, they reached the edge of a forgotten industrial district, skeletal warehouses and rusted rails. Leon led her into an old service entrance, locking the door behind them. This place. Elena panted. Where it all started, Leon said. One of my first storage sites. No one remembers it. They collapsed onto a cold metal platform, drenched and exhausted. For a while neither spoke. Then Leon said quietly, that flash drive, you still have it? She nodded, pulling it from her pocket. Arya said it's everything. He took it, turning it over in his hand. Then this is what everyone's killing each other for. Elena hesitated. Do you think she made it out? Leon shook his head. If she did, she won't come here. She'll find her own way. He plugged the drive into an old laptop stored on a shelf. Files opened instantly, names, dates, amounts, secret transfers. Politicians, generals, judges. People who had built their careers by burying others. Leon whistled softly. She wasn't lying. This could burn half the government to the ground. And clear you, Elena said. He looked up. At the cost of everyone else. Are you sure that's what you want? She swallowed. I want the truth. He smiled faintly. That's the most dangerous thing of all. That night, they hid in silence, listening for any sign of pursuit. Rain dripped through cracks in the ceiling. Elena drifted in and out of uneasy sleep. At some point, Leon covered her with his coat, watching her until her breathing steadied. When dawn broke, she woke to find him gone. Panic surged until she saw him returning from outside, soaked but calm. There's movement in the city, he said. They're hunting me, not you. We can still end this on our terms. How? By making the truth public before they can bury it. She blinked. Leak the files? He nodded. Not to the bureau. To the press. If I go down, I'll drag every corrupt bastard with me. Elena hesitated. And if we survive? Leon looked at her for a long moment. Then maybe we earn a new beginning. She smiled sadly. You still believe in beginnings? He shrugged. You still believe in people. They both laughed softly, though neither found it funny. By noon, they had everything ready, the files transferred, the messages drafted, the satellite link prepared. Leon was just about to send the data when movement flickered at the far end of the warehouse. A shadow stepped out, Dmitri. He was soaked, his face cut, his gun steady. You didn't think it would be that easy, did you? Leon turned slowly. You never quit, do you? Dmitri sneered. 15 years I built this with you, Leon. 15 years cleaning your mess. And you threw it away for her. Elena's pulse quickened. She's not the reason you fell, Leon said quietly. Your greed is. Greed? Dmitri barked a laugh. No, Leon. I just learned the lesson you taught me, survival above everything. He raised the gun. Step away from the computer. Leon didn't move. If you shoot me, every file goes public. I built failsafes. Kill me, and you'll be famous in ways you don't want. Dmitri hesitated, finger trembling on the trigger. Elena took a step forward. It doesn't have to end this way. Quiet, Dmitri snapped. You ruined everything. You made him weak. Leon's voice was steady. No, Dmitri. She made me remember I was human. The gun fired once. The sound tore through the empty warehouse like thunder. Elena screamed. Leon staggered, falling against a crate, blood blooming across his shoulder. Dmitri moved closer, raising the gun again. Before he could fire, Elena grabbed the nearest metal pipe and swung with every ounce of strength left in her. It cracked against his arm. The gun clattered to the floor. They struggled, the world spinning in chaos, boots scraping, breath ragged, adrenaline pounding. Dmitri slammed her against a pillar, fury burning in his eyes. Leon, she gasped. He was already moving, one hand clutching his bleeding shoulder, the other reaching for the fallen gun. He fired twice. Dmitri dropped, his body collapsing against the cold concrete. The silence afterward was deafening. Leon fell to his knees, blood dripping down his arm. Elena crawled to him, shaking. Stay with me, she whispered. You're okay. He smiled weakly. I've been worse. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, closing in. Elena grabbed the flash drive and shoved it into his hand. We have to go. He shook his head. No. It's over. Leon. Send it, he said, voice hoarse. Finish what we started. She stared at him, tears streaking through the grime on her face. And you? He smiled faintly. I'll buy you time. The sirens grew louder. Elena turned to the laptop, pressed the final command, and watched the files upload names, numbers, every rotten secret exploding into the light. Outside, the world was already changing, though neither of them could see it yet. When the first agents stormed the warehouse, Elena was gone. Leon was waiting for them, hands raised, blood on his suit, a quiet smile on his face. The story of Leon Markovich's empire exploded across the world by morning. News anchors spoke his name like a curse and a legend. The King of Shadows, one headline called him. The man who sold corruption back to the system, said another. The files Elena sent had spread faster than anyone could contain. Politicians resigned. Bank accounts froze. Entire companies collapsed overnight. And somewhere among the chaos, The FBI confirmed his arrest. Elena watched the reports from a rundown motel 2 towns away, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of smoke and rain. Her hands shook as the TV flickered. Leon Markovich in federal custody, millions in seized assets, major figures implicated. She turned off the screen. The room went silent, except for her own heartbeat. She'd done what he asked. She'd leaked everything. Leon had bought her enough time to vanish before the sirens closed in. But she hadn't left the country, as he told her to. She couldn't. Something in her refused to disappear while he faced the consequences alone. 3 days passed. Every morning brought new stories of deals cut, of officials panicking, of Leon refusing to testify. He'd told the world enough to burn it, but nothing that would betray his people. He hadn't said a word about her. Then, on the 4th night, a letter arrived at the motel's front desk. No return address. Just her name, handwritten in a script she recognized instantly. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. Elena. If you're reading this, then I kept my word, they took me alive. Don't waste your freedom trying to save me. You already did. I never believed in redemption, but I believe in consequence. I built this world, it's only right I stay and face it. Don't come here. Don't write. Live like the person you were before you met me. The one who still believed that words could change something. And if you ever come to the lake again, leave a white flower by the water. That way I'll know you forgave me. L. Her vision blurred by the end. She folded the letter carefully, pressing it to her chest, and for the first time since the factory, she let herself cry. Weeks passed before she finally drove back to the lake house. The property was empty, the air heavy with the scent of wet pine. The windows were shattered, the furniture gone. She walked to the edge of the dock, the water glinting gold beneath the setting sun. In her hand was a single white flower, a gardenia she'd bought from a roadside stall. She knelt, let it fall into the water, and whispered, "I forgive you." The flower drifted away, carried by a slow current toward the horizon. That night, she stayed by the lake, sleeping in the shell of the old house. The silence no longer frightened her. It felt like a memory preserved in amber, sharp, fragile, real. She thought of Leon's laughter, his fury, his impossible contradictions. He had destroyed lives but also, somehow, saved hers. And as she drifted toward sleep, she realized something she hadn't before. She wasn't just mourning him. She was mourning the part of herself that had needed him. Meanwhile, in a concrete cell hundreds of miles away, Leon sat with his wrists chained to the table. The small window above him offered only a slice of gray sky. A man in a suit entered the room, carrying a folder. "Mr. Markovich," he said. "You've caused quite the storm." Leon smiled faintly. "I always liked dramatic weather." The agent opened the folder. "You realize the files you leaked dismantled half of the Bureau's covert funding network. You burned people far beyond your reach." Leon's voice was calm. "You mean the ones who paid me to keep their hands clean? You think this makes you a hero?" "No," Leon said. "It makes me free." The agent studied him. "You'll never see daylight again." Leon leaned back. "Daylight's overrated." He looked out the small window, imagining the lake, the moonlight reflected on still water, and the sound of her voice saying, "You could still stop." For the first time in years, he felt something close to peace. Months passed. Trials began. Names were named. Those who once called him partner now called him criminal. Leon Markovich became both a warning and a myth, a man who had turned the system inside out. But while the world argued over his guilt, Elena began building a new life in quiet shadows. She moved to a small coastal town under a new name. She taught languages at a community school, living in a tiny apartment above a bookstore. Her students adored her accent, her calm voice, her patience. Sometimes they asked where she learned Russian so well. She always smiled and said, "From someone who made sure I never forgot." But some nights, when the world fell silent, she still dreamed of him, standing on that balcony, cigarette in hand, staring at the city like it belonged to him alone. And in those dreams, he wasn't a criminal or a king. He was just Leon, a man too tired to be saved and too proud to surrender. Then, one rainy evening nearly a year later, everything changed. Elena was closing the classroom when the janitor handed her a small package. "Delivered to the office this morning," he said. "No sender listed." She frowned. Inside was a plain flash drive and a single note. "For the only person I ever trusted to translate truth." Her pulse quickened. She rushed home, locked the door, and plugged the drive into her laptop. At first, it seemed empty. Then a folder appeared, labeled Aftermath. Inside were documents, letters, and audio recordings, all Leon's words. Confessions, explanations, memories. His voice filled the room, low and measured, the same tone he used when teaching her Russian. "If you're hearing this, then I'm gone. Maybe prison, maybe worse. But someone has to understand what happened. You saw it all, how we became the things we hated just to survive. This is everything. Every file I kept hidden, every transaction, every betrayal they missed. If you choose to publish it, do it your way. Translate me one last time." Her breath caught. It wasn't revenge he'd left her. It was the truth, unfiltered, untwisted, waiting to be spoken in her voice. Elena sat at her desk all night, listening. By dawn, she had made her choice. The world wasn't ready for what came next. One morning, a new report appeared on every major international site. Anonymous, unsigned, written in flawless, poetic English and Russian. It detailed not just Leon's crimes, but everyone else's, the governments, the corporations, the silent enablers who had used him as their instrument. The writing was clear, almost surgical in its honesty. It didn't glorify him, it dismantled him. But it also revealed something else, that his empire was only a reflection of a world that had created him. The piece was titled simply, "The Translation of Power." Within hours, it went viral. People argued about who had written it, a whistleblower, a journalist, an AI leak, but Elena never stepped forward. Her name wasn't on it, and it never would be. She watched from the anonymity of her small town as protests erupted, governments fell, and old systems began to crumble. The document had become a manifesto for a generation tired of corruption dressed as order. Leon had once said, "Language is power." She'd finally learned what he meant. Weeks later, she returned to the lake one final time. The forest had started to reclaim the ruins of the old house. The dock was half collapsed, the air thick with the scent of moss and water. She stood there for a long time, listening to the quiet. In her bag was another white gardenia. As she knelt by the water, she whispered, "It's done. Your story's out there now, all of it." She let the flower slip from her hand. The water accepted it gently, ripples spreading like fading memories. For a moment, she thought she heard his voice behind her, low and steady. "You were always the better half of my story." She turned, but there was only the wind. Elena smiled through the ache in her chest. "You taught me how to survive," she whispered. "But you also taught me how to speak." She stayed until the sun began to sink, painting the water in streaks of red and gold. When she finally stood, the world around her felt different, not safe, but open. She walked back through the trees, not looking back this time. The road stretched ahead, uncertain but hers. And far behind her, at the edge of the lake, a single white flower floated toward the horizon, carried by the current, a final translation of love, loss, and freedom. Months later, in an undisclosed government archive, an analyst reviewing encrypted case files found something odd. In the database of Leon Markovich's interrogation footage, the final clip was marked unavailable. The file title simply read, "Elena." When they opened it, the screen flickered with static, then a single image, Leon, sitting in the grey interrogation room, staring directly into the camera. "If anyone ever finds this," he said quietly, "tell her she got the ending right." Then the video cut to black. The analyst deleted nothing, but the system glitched, as if refusing to let the footage go. And somewhere, perhaps in memory or imagination, Leon Markovich smiled, not as a villain or a saint, but as a man finally translated into truth. The lake thawed that spring, and with it, the world seemed to breathe again. But peace was a quiet illusion. Beneath the calm surface of water and wind, a different current moved, one that whispered of unfinished stories and debts still unpaid. Elena's life had fallen into a rhythm, mornings teaching, evenings writing. Her students adored her, They brought her flowers, called her Ms. L, and told her she made the world sound beautiful in both languages. But the beauty she carried was sharp-edged. Every time she stood before a classroom, she thought of Leon's lessons, the way he'd said, "Language is power." It was almost ironic. She had learned to speak truth into existence. And yet, truth had left her alone. One night, nearly a year after the manifesto went public, a storm rolled over the coast. Wind rattled her windows, lightning painted her room silver. She was grading papers when a knock sounded at her door, 3 sharp taps, evenly spaced. Her heart stopped. Nobody visited her after dark. She moved silently to the peephole. A man stood outside, coat soaked, face hidden by shadow. "Who is it?" she called. A pause. Then, softly, "Someone who owes you a story." Her blood went cold. That voice, deep, careful, unmistakable. She unlatched the door slowly, half expecting a ghost. Leon stood in the doorway. Not in a suit this time, jeans, a dark jacket, beard unshaven, eyes older but alive. There was a faint scar along his temple, and a quietness that didn't belong to the man she once knew. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, she whispered, "You're supposed to be dead." He gave a tired smile. "That makes 2 of us." Elena stepped back, letting him in on instinct. The door closed behind him, sealing the storm outside. "How?" she asked. "They staged it," he said simply. "The Bureau needed the world to think I was gone. Too many enemies, too many debts. They offered me a choice, testify quietly, disappear, or rot in a hole. I chose silence." "Silence," she repeated, shaking her head. "You disappeared without a word." "I left you my word," he said softly. "You used it better than I ever could." Her eyes burned. "You have no idea what that cost me." He looked away. "I know exactly what it cost. I watched it happen." Her breath caught. "You watched me? I had to make sure you survived," he said. "After the files dropped, half the underworld blamed you. You think they just forgot?" Elena turned from him, arms folded. "And now? What do you want, Leon?" He hesitated. A chance to explain. "Explain what?" "That you burned the world down and vanished while I cleaned up the ashes." He took a step closer, rain dripping from his hair. "That I loved you enough to stay gone." The words landed like a physical blow. Elena stared at him, heart pounding. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because it's too late." Silence pressed between them, heavy, familiar, almost unbearable. "Finally," she said quietly, "you can't just come back and expect me to forgive you." "I didn't come for forgiveness," he murmured. "I came because the people who killed my silence are coming for yours." They sat at her small kitchen table as thunder rolled outside. Leon pulled a small envelope from his coat, sliding it toward her. Inside were photos, grainy surveillance shots of her walking to work, shopping, standing by the lake. Her stomach turned. "Who took these?" "Old ghosts," he said grimly. "The ones who lost everything when we exposed them. They're rebuilding, smaller, smarter, angrier. They know you're alive, and they want the last piece of the story." "What story?" "The files you never released," he said. "The part 1 left out." She frowned. "You told me that was everything." "It was enough to start a fire," Leon said. "Not enough to burn the roots." He leaned forward. "You remember the name Orloff?" Elena nodded slowly. "The banker in Zurich, the one who handled the secret accounts." Leon's eyes darkened. "He's still alive. And he's been hunting for the final ledger, the one that proves who built my empire in the first place." She stared at him. "You mean the people above you?" He nodded. "The ones who never appeared in the files. Politicians, generals, financiers, the true architects. I hid that ledger where no one could find it." "Where?" He met her gaze. "In Russia." That word hung between them like a knife. Russia, the country she had studied, loved, and feared. The country that lived in her voice every time she translated his world into words. Elena exhaled slowly. "You're telling me the only way to finish this is to go back there?" "Yes." "And you came here, what? To ask for my help?" Leon's voice softened. I came because I can't do it without you. She laughed bitterly. You're unbelievable. You ruin everything you touch, and now you want me to come clean up again? He didn't answer, just looked at her with something raw in his expression, not arrogance, not command, just regret. Finally, she said, if I help you, it's not for you. It's to end this. He nodded. Fair enough. Outside, lightning split the sky. Inside, the storm had already begun. The next morning, she packed a single suitcase. Passport, notebook, the flash drive with Leon's files, and one old photograph she'd never thrown away, the two of them at the museum, smiling beneath chandeliers they both hated. By the time she stepped outside, Leon was waiting beside a rented car, leaning against it with his usual patience. He looked at her bag, then at her. You sure? No, she said. But I'm going anyway. He smiled faintly. Then we're both still who we used to be. They drove in silence for hours, heading toward the nearest airport under fake names and forged papers. Rain chased them across the highways, turning the world to silver and shadow. Elena glanced at him occasionally, studying his face, the faint scars, the weariness around his eyes, the quiet gravity that never left him. He caught her looking once and smirked. Still studying me? Still trying to understand you, she said. He chuckled. Good luck with that. They flew out that night under cover of darkness, two ghosts crossing borders no one wanted to admit existed. Somewhere over the Atlantic, Leon finally spoke. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we'd never met? Elena turned from the window. You'd still be rich and dangerous. I'd still be poor and safe. He smiled sadly. You think that's better? She didn't answer. After a while, he said quietly, you changed me, Elena. Not enough, she said. He nodded. No. But enough to make me wish I could start over. The hum of the plane filled the silence that followed, steady and endless. Neither of them slept. Moscow greeted them with cold light and grey skies. The city felt sharper than memory, taller, harder, full of ghosts that wore new faces. They stayed in a small apartment Leon had secured years ago, a safe house layered with dust and silence. From there, he began making calls on encrypted channels, setting meetings with names Elena didn't recognize but could feel the weight of. At night, she walked the city alone, wrapped in her old scarf, the cold biting through the fabric. She found comfort in the rhythm of Russian around her, the music of a language that once meant safety. But safety was a myth, and she knew it. One evening, Leon returned with bruised knuckles and a grim expression. They know we're here, he said. We have 2 days at most. Then we find the ledger now, she replied. He nodded and opened a map, spreading it across the table. It's in a vault under an old textile factory outside the city, one of my first laundering fronts. The code to open it isn't words, it's sound. A recording. Of what? He hesitated. My mother's voice. She sang to me once. I recorded it before she died. Elena felt something twist in her chest. You kept that all these years. It's the only thing I didn't destroy. They drove to the outskirts before dawn. The factory was half collapsed, overgrown with weeds and silence. Inside, the air smelled of dust and oil. Leon led her through narrow corridors until they reached a steel door hidden behind rusted machines. He placed a small recorder against the sensor. The soft melody of a Russian lullaby filled the air, haunting, fragile, unbearably human. The lock clicked open. Inside was a single black safe. Leon entered another code, and the door swung wide. Stacks of old documents sat within, along with a leather notebook bound in gold. The ledger, he said quietly. Every name. Every transaction. Elena opened it, her eyes widening. It was all there, the true architects of the underworld, their connections stretching through nations and governments. This could change everything, she whispered. It already has, Leon said. A gun cocked behind them. They turned. Orlov stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 men in suits. His smile was thin as a knife. I knew you couldn't resist coming home, Leon. Leon stepped slightly in front of Elena. Orlov. Still protecting strays, I see, Orlov sneered. How poetic. Hand over the ledger, and maybe I'll let her live. Elena's hand tightened around the book. Leon's voice was low. You always did underestimate poetry. Then, faster than thought, he grabbed the recorder and threw it at Orloff's head. The sound burst through the room, the lullaby, echoing once more. Gunfire followed instantly. Chaos. Shouting. Sparks. Elena ducked behind the vault, clutching the ledger. Leon returned fire, taking down one man before a bullet tore through his side. Leon, she screamed. He stumbled, firing again. The last guard fell. Orloff lunged forward, knife flashing, but Leon met him halfway, slamming him into the steel door. The knife clattered away, and Orloff dropped, unconscious or dead, she couldn't tell which. Leon collapsed beside the vault, blood darkening his jacket. Elena rushed to him, pressing her hands against the wound. Stay with me, you'll be fine. He smiled weakly. You always say that. Because it has to be true. He coughed, his hand finding hers. The ledger, take it, finish it. Tears blurred her vision. No, not again. I'm not leaving you again. He managed a faint chuckle. You're stubborn as ever. Because you made me that way. For a moment, their eyes locked, the storm of all their years between them, every lie and truth balanced in silence. Then Leon whispered, translate me one last time, Elena. His hand fell still. Hours later, when the authorities arrived, only one person remained. Elena stood in the grey light, the ledger clutched to her chest, her face streaked with tears and dust. She didn't speak when they questioned her. She didn't need to. The truth was written already in blood, in language, in the endless loop of his mother's lullaby that still played faintly through the broken recorder. Weeks passed. The ledger went public, just as Leon had wanted. Names fell, empires crumbled, and history was rewritten once more. Elena returned to the lake one final time. The air was cold, the water still. She placed 2 white gardenias on the surface, one for the man he was, and one for the man he tried to be. Then she whispered, you're free now. As the flowers drifted away, the wind carried a single word across the water, soft as memory. Thank you. And somewhere, in the silence between language and eternity, she knew he heard her. You think this was the end? Every ending hides a secret, and I'm just getting started. Smash that like button, subscribe, and stay close, because the next story will change everything.